If you're struggling with your vitality, energy, mood, focus, or sleep, this podcast is for you. Your host, Dr. Tsung, ER doctor and aerospace flight surgeon, will help you reach for the stars and remove the barriers or blockades that have been holding you back from living your best life. If you've been challenged by your health, relationships, or productivity, then it's time for a breakthrough. So here's your host, Dr. Tsung.
Hello and welcome to It's Not Rocket Science Show. I am your host, Dr. Tsung. Have you ever wanted to do something like a presentation or reading and you put it on your calendar and then the end of the day, you could only read like 10 pages in like a few hours or really you don't even get started because you're distracted by emails? Or perhaps you intended for you to eat healthy, to not overeat or not get that dessert. And then you just get derailed and you overeat and stuff yourself, even though you're already full. And what about the other times when you start watching Netflix? You just wanted to watch one episode of House, and which is what happened to me just a few weeks ago. And then it keeps going because it just keeps playing. And then all of a sudden you watch 3 episodes. And then all of a sudden it's 10:30 and way past your bedtime. You get completely derailed. And the next morning you wake up and thinking, why didn't you just go to bed earlier? And a lot of times we have set bedtimes for us and we get derailed by our children, by work, by anything else. It's by our phone, by the apps. And essentially we intend to do something and we get derailed because we get distracted. And in this episode, I want to talk about how to be indistractable, which is a concept in a book by Nir Eyal. And we'll talk about the definition of indistractable and distractible, and also what causes it. And of course, the strategies that you can use to counter it. So let me ask you a question, which is also stated in the book as well. What is the opposite word for indistractable? And a lot of times, most of the time, actually, we would say, well, indistractable, the opposite, of course, is focused. But in reality, the opposite word for distraction is actually traction. The opposite of distraction is actually traction. So what that means is traction is something that you're doing, your actions, you have intentions of doing a certain item, and you're actually moving towards that goal, and it aligns with your values and what you stand for. So that's traction. Anything that you're doing that is moving you along to achieve that goal or intention. And distraction means that you're derailed from your original intention and you don't end up achieving whatever goal that you set or intention that you set from the very beginning. So the example of I only want to watch Netflix for 1 episode, then you intend to watch 1 episode, you end up watching 3, and it goes past your bedtime, your intended bedtime of 8 or 9 o'clock, for example, and then you end up going to bed at midnight and derail your next morning's work that you planned. And I thought that when I heard that concept, it was very enlightening to me. It was a fantastic framework for me to now think of what distraction actually is. Distraction simply is when you are moved away or derailed from your original intention. The next question is, what causes it? We often think is usually caused by external triggers, like, a phone, a notification, a ping, email notification. And so we get distracted by electronics. And it was surprising to find out that actually 10% of the distractions come from external triggers like that. And 90% of the distraction come from internal triggers. So what that means is it's actually coming from our own thought process. There was that email that I said I was going to respond to, but I have my own urgent deadline within myself that, really I should respond like right now. And because to me, as I've seen it, I feel like it's urgent. Or perhaps there's some trip that I've been wanting to book. I wanted to look at flights, I want to look at traveling, hotel, and that's all I can think of. There's like that itch and that urge to start researching because I keep thinking about it. It's been on my mind. And that happened to me just last week, actually, which derailed my morning's productivity. So a lot of times it's about managing our internal triggers and how to deal with that discomfort, because the discomfort of wanting to do something, the urge to want to do something causes pain. And what our brain wants to do is to relieve that pain. And something very similar that's mentioned in the book, that something very similar happens in smokers. When the smokers, they have that itch and urge to smoke, it's because, and they actually smoke, not because they actually like the taste of cigarettes, but it's to scratch that itch, it's to relieve that internal pain. And the strategy is really to combat that internal trigger, combat that internal pain. And that's how you can really be indistractable. And some of the antidotes that I mentioned first is that, well, number one, you have to find out what is actually distracting you. And I would say after this episode, I would pick one thing that you have intended to do for the longest time, but you have not been able to get yourself to achieve that habit or even start. So pick one thing that you've been intended to do and identify what it's distracting you from it. Is it your phone? Is it the email notification? Is it perhaps your internal thought of like wanting to celebrate, if you had a stressful day, wanting to relieve that stress by eating or drinking alcohol? Or if you have always wanted to wake up early, but have not been able to because you go to bed late because you're distracted by work or watching TV shows at night, then you can identify those intentions that have been derailed and identify those distractions. Number one, you can't really address it if you don't know what they are. And I would say to think about the pain points or the cost of you not meeting your intentions, not achieving your goal. So for me, when I thought about my distractions, they were typically like my phones, the app, the email notifications. And even though I've set like a top 3 priority list to be done for the day and for work, or when I was in medical school or residency, and I get distracted by phone, by email, or by researching other things that don't matter, the cost to me is that I tend to have to stay up a little bit later. I have to keep working until 7 or 8 p.m. sometimes. And it's a huge cost because now I don't have time to enjoy myself with my friends and my family, my fiance. I've refused a lot of dinner gatherings and even lunch gatherings. And I've even had to skip some weddings and bachelorettes parties just because I thought that, I am behind on work. I have to keep going. I have to study. I didn't get to finish all of my practice questions on USMLE, so I can't go to that event. So when I thought about the cost, then that got me the motivation to really focus on what really matters, the priorities, and not let anything else get in the way of my top morning priorities. So I started this when I was a medical student, actually, when I was taking step 3. And I wanted to leave my afternoons and evenings free. So I decided to wake up at 4:30, and I did 150 to 200 USMLE questions before I even began work. And then I was done for the day. My top priorities have already been done for the day. And I was free to actually work in clinic and not be distracted and go all day. Otherwise, if I work on the questions after I am in clinic all day, there was no way I would have finished 150 to 200 questions. And that includes going through it, reading all the explanations and understanding and learning the material. There was just no way. And more recently, when I decided to, keep my morning wake up times consistent, so waking up at 5 or 5:30, when I thought about the cost is that if I don't do this, if I don't focus and finish the reading that I have to do, the learning I have to, deep work I have to do in the morning, then at night, I will have to work past 5 p.m. and I lose the precious time that I have with my fiance, Mike. And typically those are the time reserved for us to walk our dog and, cook and have a nice meal together, enjoy our time together. And so that is a huge pain point for me if I don't get to do that. And I get more stressed out and feel more overworked. So again, think about your pain point. Think about what it's costing you down the line, not just first order effects, second order effects, third order effects. So that means that, yes, I get less time, less productive. I don't get to finish my work, my reading, and I get distracted. Then I don't get enough time to spend with my friends, my loved ones. And then I'm imbalanced in my life. And then I'm stressed. I am actually overworked and burned out. And then it keeps going because it affects your health. It affects your mindset. It'll affect everything you do the subsequent days. I mean, the effects are huge. And that doesn't count the negative self-talk that you give yourself. At least it happens to me. I'm trying not to do this. That, oh my God, I had like these 3 things set up to do, my top 3 priorities for the day. And I didn't even finish. I didn't even touch it. The negative self-talk is something that needs to be managed as well. That you have to be okay if you don't get to do this all the time, that, you accept yourself as who you are, because if you're distracted, you're only human, and you just tell yourself that is okay. And we keep going, we try again tomorrow. So that is a huge thing. And I still get caught in that trap of negative self-talk and blaming myself for not finishing or not being distracted. That's okay. Just be okay with yourself. You are beautiful and perfect as you are. And so now we'll talk about the antidotes or strategies. Number one, since we talked about the 90% of the time is to manage internal triggers, and 10% of the time, the distraction comes from external triggers. So to manage that urge or the itch to do certain things, then you would get a kitchen timer. That's one of the items mentioned. I have one here myself that I used for Pomodoro techniques, the 25-minute work and 5-minute rest cycle. And I will get a kitchen timer and not a phone as your timer so that you are not distracted by your phone. And whenever you have that itch of like, well, maybe I'll just eat a little bit more, or I'm almost done eating what's on the plate and there's like a little bit in the pot, so might as well just finish what's in the pot. Or perhaps, well, I watch one episode and the next episode is only like 30 minutes, so it's okay. We'll just keep going. It's fine. Or perhaps there's one email that I thought I need to get back to, and let me just send that one email or make that one request, and I'll close that email, and that's it. I mean, how many times do we actually do that, where we go in, we just wanted to do one thing, to find that one address, to find that one fact, one information in the email, and then we just stop. Very, very few times that we have enough focus to do that. So whenever you have that urge, you just set a timer for 10 minutes and just ride that wave. Just allow yourself that, okay, in 10 minutes, I will be able to find that information in my email, to respond to that email. In 10 minutes, I will be able to start that Netflix episode or whatever episode you're doing in 10 minutes. Then I will get up and get the next serving, the next plate that I wanted to eat, or the dessert or whatever snacks that you have. In 10 minutes, I will say, check Facebook, check my social media, check Instagram. And the reason why you set 10 minutes and allow yourself to do it is because when you just tell yourself, no, I can't do it. No, stop, can't do it. No way. Then your brain wants to do it even more. And it just keeps bugging you and bugging you and bugging you. and it just doesn't stop. And that's why a lot of times we just give in. But if you give yourself 10 minutes to ride that urge, the wave, it will most likely pass and you will most likely be okay not doing it, because the urges usually last seconds to minutes, which is what I found as well when I have the urge, like in the morning, to check my messages and check my, like a lot of times my friends stay up later than I do. So they're talking quite a bit and text quite a bit. There's WhatsApp messages. And there's so many times where I have the urge when upon waking to check it. And I just think about the cost. No, that's going to derail my whole afternoon. I won't have time to spend with them. Then I sometimes just wait a little bit and say, okay, let me just shower first. Let me brush my teeth first. Let me get ready. Let me make my matcha tea first. And then I'll check. And a lot of times I'm okay not doing it. That urge is gone. So I would suggest getting the kitchen timer, manage the internal urges, think about the cost to you if you decide to do this certain item and you get distracted from your original intention and you lose traction. And regarding managing the external triggers, I would suggest, for me, what's worked really well is leaving my phone outside in the dining area while I work, while I do my very, very deep work in the morning, especially when I have to read like 100-page documents or 100 slideshows, or when I have to review a review article, a scientific article. I take my phone outside and I do not allow any notifications on my laptop, no email pop-ups for sure, no text. I close all the chat, and that I have found that has worked really well for me to decrease the external triggers. And one thing regarding that too is when at night when you're going to bed, I found that what's worked really well for me is to leave the phone outside charging. Actually, I leave it in the office, and I have another phone that I leave in the laundry room because it's closer to my bedroom, and so I can hear the alarm. So the benefit of that is that you're not distracted or tempted by it when you're in bed to look at your phone, which derails your whole bedtime, of course. And if you derail your bedtime, you derail your morning. And another benefit is that if you have to wake up to turn off the alarm, you have to walk, and that wakes you up automatically. So the one thing that he mentioned when he manages the external triggers is that he actually has a timer. Nir Eyal, he has a timer that cuts off the internet and Wi-Fi at 10 p.m. because as a family, as a whole, they have come up with a pact that at 10 p.m. is when we should be off of all of our devices, our TV, whatever it is, because that aligns with their values. I thought that was a really great idea. We have timers in the outlets that, manages other items. And I think that's a fantastic idea. We're going to start plugging it into our router. And so I would say that you need to to manage your internal triggers. You have to allow yourself to be able to do that item, but just delay it a little bit. Move the devices out of your room if you want to manage your external triggers, or use technical timer devices like outlet timers to manage, say, your Wi-Fi network. And to put everything that you want to do on the calendar, to allow time on the calendar for you to do whatever you want. So what that means is that if you are distracted by your kids, just make a pact with your kids that, from this time to this time, this is our time to hang out, and I will be available to you during this time frame. But before that, please allow me to do the work I need to do. Of course, if you have young kids, it's a little difficult, but if they're a little bit older, I think this is possible. Or make a pact with your loved ones, your family, that from this time to this time, then, this is our bedtime. This is my productive work time, like in the morning. Please do not come in to distract me, and pencil in the times you want to check your social media on your calendar. Say from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., this is social media time for me to respond, to connect to my friends or my loved ones. Or from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., this is my relaxation time. I can take a bath. This is a me time. I can watch TV or a movie if I wanted to, or I can just do nothing and sit and meditate or walk. So put in your calendar your me time, your family time, your time where you intend to do certain things like watching TV shows, like checking social media and checking emails and responding to people at work or making calls. Set times, usually I do in the afternoon so that in the morning when all my productive work is done, all of my calls, meetings, emails are done in the afternoon. And I set a 1 hour time slot, because if you don't set a 1 hour time slot for the emails, you find that 1 or 2 hours, depending on how long it takes or how in depth your emails are. But if you don't set a timer, you could keep going forever. So I know that was a lot. In summary, distraction, the opposite of distraction is traction. And all that means is that traction is when you are moving towards your intended goal or purpose. And distraction is when you are moving away from your intended goal and purpose. Nothing is good and nothing is bad. All that means is that if you intend to do something, then the first step is to identify the distractions from it that distracts you from it. The second step is that think about the cost that it's costing you if you're distracted from it. Then think about it in first, second, third order effects too. And then the next thing is to manage your internal triggers. What are some of the thoughts that are coming up that makes you itch and have that urge to do that certain thing? And set a timer for it and allow just 10 minutes. And you will do that in 10 minutes and see how you feel, see how you can ride a wave of that internal urge. And remove any external triggers from your environment if possible. And the last thing I think is to make sure you pencil in on your calendar your intended activities. Discuss with people at your work, your family, your kids, your time that you're available for them so that they understand and you have an agreement, you have a pact so that you're not so stressed out about it. And I think the most important thing is, though, this is a whole process. It's a learning process. It's a habit forming process. And as human beings, we are going to have those urges and we're going to give in to those urges. And we will be distracted from our intended purpose every so often. It's inevitable. And just think of it as a part of life. And you're just a normal human being. And there's no need to beat yourself up if one day you get distracted from your top priority list. And that is okay. Think about the good that came with it. Think about you've enjoyed this extra episode that gave you joy, perhaps. You enjoy extra time with your kids. You've communicated with your coworker more today. It's okay. It's all okay, because in the end, it really doesn't matter that much if you look at the scope of it. If you look at the scope of how tiny we are in this tiny amount of frame on Earth, really nothing is that urgent or that important or that negative, if that makes sense. If we don't hit our top priorities for the day, the world is going to keep spinning. Our life really will not be drastically impacted. We just have this imaginary deadline or imaginary urgency importance of these tasks. And really, it's going to be okay. You're perfect the way you are. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm so grateful for your time. And for the show notes, the links, the information I talked about, please go to itsnotrocketscienceshow.com. If you go on there, there will be a free gift available for you as well for productivity hacks. Remember, everything we need is already within us now. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener every single week that posts a review in iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a private VIP day for a health and life makeover with Dr. Tsung herself. Then be sure to head on over to itsnotrocketscienceshow.com and pick up your free gift from Dr. Tsung. Then join us on the next episode.